Good day, everyone. Welcome to Studio 39 Design Studio. This is Richard speaking, your resident architect. This is a 6-part video series on how to create your own ArchiCAD template, which you can then use and abuse whenever, however. We've done a couple of videos on this, but in this video we're gonna be doing surfaces, composites, and building materials. So without any further ado, first and foremost, I'd like to encourage you guys to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel because I'll be doing videos like this every week. So now let's get into it. First of all, I want to be talking about surfaces. Now, if you want to add your own surfaces and you want to you want to add your own surfaces and you want to manipulate existing surfaces, right? So what you have to do, you go to documents. I think it's documents. Let me check here. Documents, and then maybe I'm wrong when I say documents. I think it's options, and then it's options, and then element attributes, and then you go to surfaces, the one with the paintbrush. That's how you open the editing area, or you can just click on the surfaces icon, the paintbrush on the attributes panel, which is currently open. So what you want to do is first and foremost, before we continue, I'd like to explain a couple of things to you. So there's a number of surfaces here which are preloaded with ArchiCAD when you get it, and then you can you have basic in this version of ArchiCAD we have basic engine, and then we have Cine Render by Maxon and OpenGL. On this one we're going to be doing the basic engine because the basic engine and the OpenGL are the same thing, and then Cine Render is what you'll be using for when you want to make your renders. So let's go into basic engine, which is currently open right now, and you're gonna have exposure to light, and then you can select which color you want. The color does not affect anything you'll see on the texture or the finish, but it only helps you to depict the type of color which is indicated on the left hand side of each and every material in the material list. And then you can also sort of like manipulate transparency, emission, reflection, and then glow. And then you have your background, which really doesn't matter. I've never touched that before. You can set up a pen set, but that's not necessary at this point in time. And then you can have your texture, and then you can then set up what type of alpha channel effects you want, and also the type of the width and the height, and the tilt, and the I forgot what they call this, but it's the mirroring method. How do you want it to mirror? Do you want to mirror horizontally, vertically, or do you want to mirror like quadrantical? Either way, it's really up to you. So just to also speak about the exposure to light, you can see that each and every material has different attributes here. And when I go to, that was glass, if I go to a carpet, it has different attributes here. If I have paint, it has different attributes here. So in order to cut down the time that you'll be working on this, what you usually do is you go for the type of material. Say you want to add a material. For this one, I'm going to be adding cotton steel because it's something that I saw that is not added on ArchiCAD. The closest material that I can have to cotton steel right now would be copper. And with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to click new, and then a pop-up will come into view, and then you can either duplicate or new category or replace settings from category. For now, we just want to duplicate, and it's going to be you can then click OK. But with this one, I'm just going to go ahead. Okay, first of all, in the materials list, you see now there's a copy made, and we want to manipulate the copy right now, which is going to be cotton steel, which is a metal. So this works out fine for me. And then the most important thing with the cotton steel is we want to have sort of like an image, and I've already downloaded an image and placed it on my desktop, and I'm just gonna open it, and then obviously now it's selected, and I'm just gonna say OK, and it's gonna show up here, and it's gonna show up at the top portion also. And then maybe I can then change the color to a bit reddish color, maybe get an orangey color, yeah, a bit darker orange color. That's something that just to help you visually understand what type of texture or what type of color that this element has. So other things like surface, alpha channel effects, you don't necessarily need to be touching that. And also exposure to light, it's already a metal surface which I chose, so it's okay to just let that one slide. And then you'd want to, basically this is just for the main rendered main image in the ArchiCAD file. But if you want to go to senior render, which is what you're going to be using to select to render in ArchiCAD, I wouldn't suggest that you render in ArchiCAD, but if you're doing preliminary renders, you might want to not go maybe to Lumion, Twinmotion or Atlantis, and you might want to just do renders on ArchiCAD. They can be quite good, but it takes a bit longer for renders to happen in senior render inside ArchiCAD. But with that said, let's just get into it. So here you have all the attributes which pertain to the texture and how the element is going to be represented while it's rendering. So let's go get down to it. You have the size. The size really doesn't matter right now because the 1000 by 1000 millimeters is fine right now. That's matrix. And then you have the color. We're going to talk about this. This is very important. Diffusion. Diffusion, basically you can toggle this on and off if you want to use it. If you don't want to use it, it's really up to you. I don't use diffusion that much, but I just keep it on my or on my list of things that I want my surface to have as an attribute. And then luminance is, do you want the element to be luminous? As you can see, you can then control the brightness of the element by going here, and then the color. You can have maybe a yellow luminous color. Okay, it's not changing here. I don't understand why. There you go. You can have a yellow luminous color, but we're not going to be using luminance and transparency. If you toggle the tick sign, you can have how do you want it to be sort of like transparent and everything like that. Obviously we don't want it to be transparent unless it was glass. And then reflectancy, how much reflectancy do you really want this element to have? So over here it's showing 100% reflectancy on both global and reflection brightness and global specular brightness. And then environment, obviously I don't really use environment much. And then the fogginess of the surface material that we are going to be using can be then be manipulated over here, but I never use that very much. And the bump, also you can also use whatever bump you really want to use. You can also select maybe if you have downloaded specifics from the internet, they do come up with elements that give a texture bump, which the main reason for the bump is actually to have sort of like a 3D depth when you are doing the render. So that's another thing you can go into. I never use normal and alpha and glow. Sometimes if I want an element to have a glow, you'll see right there that it shows that the element is glowing, and then you can also select what type of color glow do you want that element to have, and then the brightness. Maybe you can see that the less brightness, the less the element has brightness in it. The inner strength and all of these things don't really much use it very much, but it's something that you have to have an understanding of. Displacement, and then grass. Grass is something which is very new to ArchiCAD. I think the last two versions had it. So if you wanted an element to be grass, you can also manipulate it here, what type of color grass you want, and the density, how dense you want this element, this grass to be on this element or this surface, and then the length of the grass, the width of the grass, the crinkle of the grass, the bend, and the wetness of the grass. But obviously this is not a grass material, so we're going to be switching that off. And then illumination, really not something that I've used quite a bit, because obviously we have luminance and glow, which are good enough. But if you want to use luminance, it's really up to you to understand what all of these mean. But at this point in time, the most important thing for me right now would be to change the texture right there. So under texture, I'm going to click on noise, and then I'm going to click on what type of noise what type of texture do I want, and I'm going to be choosing the image texture, and then I'm going to be in the embedded library. I'm going to use the one that I just recently added, which is cotton steel, and then I'm gonna edit. It's gonna show up here, and then obviously it's showing up there. Another thing that I'm realizing right now is that this element is highly reflective, so I want it to be less reflective, maybe about 50% reflective, maybe even less than that, 50%. Oh wait, I clicked enter, so we go back into it, right back where we left off. So you can see I think I want it to be less reflective, because the cotton still has a rust to it, which doesn't allow it much to be reflective, but then it's still steel, but it's less reflective. So I want to indicate that it's less reflective. I think I like how this is coming out, and the color, I think the color is okay. I'm not really going to be worrying about the color. Maybe I can have it an orange and a much darker orange maybe, and then it's added onto the color is then sort of like merged with the image. So that's another thing that you need to understand about that. And then you can just say okay. So I'm going to draw a wall on the ground right here on my ground floor layout. So that's the wall. Maybe zoom in just a little bit more, and then we can go into 3D. I want to zoom into it, and then I can click on it, and then I can go to under model. You'll see that you have the override surfaces. So these are the preset surfaces. You can when you switch them on, you'll see that this is a type of paint with a bump, which you can see then in 3D. That's the bump that I was talking about, and this is the interior side of the wall with the white color paint, and then it has a bump indicating that this is plaster. You can also manipulate it here depending on how you set your ArchiCAD environment. For me, this is why I prefer having my environment in this way, which I did indicate on my first video. And then you can then go to cotton metal and then cotton steel. As you can see, we have cotton steel right there. I like the texture, so that's good for me. So if maybe we were to say go back to coarse and steel. I just want to indicate something, and then we go back to basic engine, and then we do the 4-quadrant sort of like mirroring method, and that's what happened. It looks a bit better, it looks a bit more consistent, and I might have to go into the image which I downloaded from the internet and maybe edit it just a little bit so that I can get rid of this white line over here. So that's basically how you'd want to set up surfaces in ArchiCAD. And let's get on to the next portion. I hope this was helpful to you guys. Let's go on to the next portion of this video, which is going to be a building materials. Okay guys, now let's talk about building materials. Now, building materials are a combination of pans, fills, and surfaces, and we've already covered pans and fills in a previous video, and also we just recently covered surfaces. So let's just get into it. In order to get the editing page or the editing window for editing building materials, you need to go to options and then element attributes, and then you can use the building materials, or you can just click the brick wall looking like icon on the attributes panel, and that's where you're gonna be setting up your building materials. And on the left hand side we see sort of like an area where we can see all the current building materials that are pre-installed with ArchiCAD when you install it or when you get it. So what you can see here is that on the left hand side we have two boxes. One box indicates the fill, which when we cut through an element is going to be showing, and then you will also have a fill, another box which indicates the surface material, which we covered on the or before we got to this point. And then you have the ID name and priorities. Obviously all of these you can manipulate on the left hand side. The name you can manipulate at the top. So as you can see, this is generic environment with an ENOO ID, and then we have a surface which is going to be a paint, golden being or something like that, and then we have a fill which is about 25% gradient, or yeah, basically I think that's a gradient if I'm not solid fill. It's a 25% solid fill. So basically that's that. So you can manipulate, you can change the name, you can add your cut fill, you can also add project origin, element origin, projected origin, and you can also add a new surface for an element. You can either depict the intersection priority. So for the intersection priority, I'm going to do a separate video because it does get a bit overwhelming, so I don't want this video to take too long. So we can do that in a different video when we are talking more so about composites. And then we can manipulate the ID, we can indicate which manufacturer, and description of the element. Basically you can also add the thermal conductive conductivity of the element, which you can get from the manufacturer. Should you wish that type of information should show up when you are doing your energy efficiency calculations, which ArchiCAD does allow. I think it's under design and then energy evaluations. In countries like the country that I'm living in right now, when you're doing municipal submissions, that is definitely required. So to have those energy evaluation or energy efficiency calculations on your building, there are certain regulations that you can't go over a certain amount. So in other countries they do provide subsidies for people that have a lower carbon emission on their building designs and everything like that. So now let's go back. I don't want to go too much into that. So you can also have density heat capacity and embodied energy, embodied carbon. So for this one, we're going to be going through adding a new element. So as you can see, different elements have different priorities. As you can see, that steel has a very high priority. Elements like water has a low intersection priority, along with soil and sand, and things like plastered gypsum board. Iron has a high priority. So the one element which we've already added on surfaces is that I realized that we don't have it here on building materials. Is also cotton steel. So I'm going to be adding cotton steel, and I want cotton steel to be similar to like stainless steel or something like that. So we can have stainless steel and say new, and then you can say duplicate and then say okay. Or what you can do, you can just say, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and say duplicate. So there's two of the stainless steel and then stainless steel copy, and then you can go ahead and just rename it over there. So we're gonna say cotton steel here. And then obviously this is the right fill that I want to use, and then I can change the surface to the surface that I recently added, which is cotton. And then I prefer to be close to steel, the cotton steel. And then obviously we do have here a priority, an ID. You can change the ID. I'm not going to be changing it right now. We don't have the manufacturer. I don't have much of a description, but under material categories, you can see that cotton steel is nowhere to be found. I don't think it's gonna show here, but either way, so what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to adding this information manually under the physical properties, because I have gotten them over the internet. So we have 23 for the thermal conductivity, and then we have density at 8,400. That's definitely it. As you can see, all the fields on the left hand side of my boxes are not showing properly because obviously I did change my pen set. So I'll have to fix that maybe in a separate video for you guys. I think we should get into that. That's going to be a separate video apart from this whole process. So we can go ahead and just save that. Now we have this element which we have created, and as you can see, I did manipulate the surface sort of like manually. So now I'm going to have it as the exact. So now we're gonna go into structure instead of going to surface exactly to manipulate that. So I want this structure to be indicated as a cotton steel. As you can see, now everything comes into view properly. So now I'm actually manipulating the structure rather than just manipulating the surface of the structure. So that's something else you need to understand when it comes to building materials. So I hope this video was helpful to you guys, and I think now it's time to go into composites, which is an extension of surfaces, building materials. So yeah, okay designers, now we are moving on to creating composite structures. For that, you need to go to options, element attributes, and then click on the composites element, or you can just use the attributes panel and then click on the composites icon. As usual, you will have the existing pre-installed composite structures on the left hand at the top, and then you can create new ones, duplicate existings, rename and delete as you wish. But the most important thing is under the edit skin and line structure. As you can see, this is where you set up all the elements. We're gonna go into it in just a little bit. And on the right hand side, you have the fill type and the finish type, which is mainly the surface. And also you can also select whether you want to use the composite that you've created either with a wall, a floor, a roof, or a shell type. For this one, this is actually a slab, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. And then you can insert a skin, or then you can remove a skin. Now another thing that you as we get into it is you can then every skin that you insert comes with a line at the beginning, and at the end it also covers the line. You can also choose to show the line. Actually, the problem with this one is that all the lines are in a different color because I have not preset this information. So let me just go ahead and change the pen colors. As you can see, even on the right hand side, how the composition has been affected with borders all around. So obviously now we have the line. You can also untick the line if you wanted to show. As you can see, that's toggling in and out. And then you can also depict what type of line you wanted. You can have different type of line pens. As you can see, that's affecting the pen type over there on the composition area. And also you can toggle you can toggle the line which wraps around the element. This is also useful should you wish to use elements like air, which is I think, or air space. If you want to use element like air space, you can then toggle that out of view. But if you wish to continue in the direction that you were in initially, so. And then also you can also change the type of line that wraps around that element which you created, and then the type you can either have it as a core or a finish or other. This is more important when it comes to how you represent your blends and your sections. Basically, this information is most important for expressing sections and blends for detailed information. You can either choose under partial structured display on the quick options list. You can pick the entire model or without finishes, core only, and core of load bearing elements. This is quite useful for when you're just doing a blend for the bricklayers, or a blend for the blend or sections for the concrete masons and stone masons, so on and so forth. So basically that's how you do. If you want this to be a core, if you just want it to be a finish, you can then depict it as you wish. It's best to use core for all load bearing elements, and also finishes for like gypsum board, ceilings, or plaster, or things like that. And then the rest can be other, which is pretty much not as important. Or something like insulation or something like that. And also another thing you need to also understand here is that on the far right of this edit skin and line structure area, you can also depict the size of the element. At the bottom you'll get the accumulative thickness of all the elements which have been brought in on these elements right here. So I see that it has gone back, so I'm gonna go ahead and change it again. And then in terms of the line pen sets, so that's basically it, guys, for this composite structures. You can go and create your own composite structure. I'm going to do a separate video that goes into depth with this one, because I don't want to take too much time trying to explain how to create composite structures. So I'm just going to create a separate video which is going to be quite cohesive and very well put together, where I'll be building up a section using this type of information. So with that said, I'd like to encourage you guys to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, because I'll be doing videos like this. And look out for the composites structure video which I'll be creating in the near future. Thank you guys, love you, and God bless you. Goodbye.